Hey yo, what's up? I'm your girl A1 the artist, aka I am the black sheep.
And I'm your girl Robin.
And today we're going to talk about the shit that people think about
but don't want to talk about. Similar thoughts.
Hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you had a good week. Once again, I am A1 the artist, and we have Robin with us today.
What's up, everybody?
So today we are going to be talking about a subject that's kind of near and dear to most women in America and outside America, really in the world. There's so much that we have to endure as women that we have to go through, and we're just caused to deal with it, and we're supposed to just accept the behavior and treatment that we go through. So if you're reading the topic, it's Woes of Women.
Yes, so bear with us, guys. Our job on this podcast is to be as open, as honest as possible with you guys. And like A1 said, this is a pretty dark and a tough subject matter to speak on, but it's important, and we as women should talk about these things. So I hope you enjoy the conversation, and I mean, if you're ready to open up about it, please reach out to us on our social media and let us know what you've experienced and how you've handled things.
Definitely, I'm gonna try not to cry this episode. So, but yeah, I think we've all kind of like went through things. There's like 4 out of 5 women have experienced some kind of abuse, whether it's rape or molestation, sexual harassment, or any of those things that we kind of have to go through. So how about you, Robin? Have you ever had any experiences where with molestation, or do you know anybody who experienced that, or what are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, I actually know a couple of women who have experienced this. I actually don't bring it up because, and this might sound strange, but I just don't know if it affected me or if it has, and I don't know. But anyways, I was a little girl, like elementary age. I can't remember the age, but I was a little girl. And I was with my siblings, and we were swimming in the pool in our apartment complex. And there was a gentleman there, an older gentleman by himself, playing with the kids in the pool. And he molested me. Like, he was lifting me up. He was grabbing me by my genital areas, my vagina. I don't know. Is that a weird word to say? I'm sorry. But yeah, he was touching me inappropriately. And thankfully, my parents really instilled in all of us to, speak up when something's not right. So immediately after it happened, I let my parents know, and the man got arrested like that same day. So I think that may be a reason why it hasn't affected me, is because I took action immediately. But it's very strange. Like, honestly, this thought, like the occurrence, like, slips my mind quite often. Like, I don't think about it. Like, it doesn't trigger me in any way. But I don't know if any other woman has, or any girl has experienced that. But that was my experience with being molested as a little girl.
Yeah, I think that, that's where it becomes a muddy line, is whether or not you tell. And generally speaking, as a child, you, unless your parents make it a safe haven for you to tell, you don't tell and you don't talk about it because you're afraid of whatever repercussions that might come with it. I know for me, I've experienced multiple situations in a home where my mom thought that I would be safe at, but I was molested by my cousins. And I know that a lot of people feel like when it's two kids that are doing things, it's not a big deal. But I later found out when I was older that it is still considered molestation, even if you are molested by somebody that's within your own age. In addition to being molested by my cousins, I was also molested by my uncle. And so I've experienced a lot of trauma at a young age that kind of set precedent for me. At the time, it just kind of like put me in a weird space. And then when I did tell about it, nothing was done, and it didn't make anything stop. So then I had an older cousin that actually like caught the situation, and instead of helping or making it stop or anything like that, she kind of took further advantage of me. And so that kind of fucked me up too. So it's like I'm in this home with all these people that are doing these things to me in addition to treating me horribly. But I didn't want to say anything because I knew that, my mom, she was a single mom and she was doing the best that she could. And her and her sister were like super close, and I didn't want to ruin their relationship by saying anything because I thought that if I tell, then they wouldn't be cool anymore. And so I just kind of dealt with it. And I kind of held it up for many, many years. It wasn't until like recently, like I was talking with my boyfriend, and we were he asked me, well, he wrote me an email about his childhood, and he asked me about my childhood. And so I commenced, and it was like word vomit. It's like I've been wanting somebody to ask me this all my life, but I like just held it in, and for some reason I just regurgitated everything that ever happened to me when I was a kid to him. And then when I was reading it, I was like, maybe I should tell my mom all these things that happened to me. And so I sent her the email, and we kind of sat down and talked about it, and she was devastated and she felt responsible and all of the things. But I'm like, I didn't tell you. I know for me, with my daughter and my son, because it doesn't just happen to girls, it does happen to boys too. I try to stress for them, like growing up, to if anybody touches you inappropriately or make you feel uncomfortable in any way, tell me, because if you don't tell me, I can't make it stop. And so I think that the fact that you told was brave, and they made it stop. You know what I mean? Like, I think in general, in most cases, unless the mom is like, because there are some cases where the child has told the mom and the mom doesn't believe him because the mom wants to be with the man and she's lonely or whatever the baggage the mom has, where they want to keep staying with the person that's abusing their child. But I believe those are probably more rare than parents that will make it stop. I think also it's the fear of you don't want your parents to go to jail, or if they hurt the person that's abusing you, then they'll have to reap the consequences of that. Like, it depends on the person, and I think it's just, and then a lot of times the abuser will threaten the child and say, if you tell or whatever, then I'm going to do the X, Y, and Z to kind of keep them from telling and kind of maintaining that control. Because at the end of the day, that's what it is. It's like when people are molesting somebody or raping or whatever they're doing, it's because they're trying to maintain control over you. And so they get some kind of sick, twisted power within themselves to have that control. And so I think that the fact that you told, you weren't as affected long term because it was that one time and you told and it stopped. So it makes it more difficult when you have repeated trauma, and then you start to go into a dark space, or you start to you start to see things in a distorted view.
Yeah, absolutely. So you think, I guess, the number one reason sexual assault victims don't come forward is simply the fear of what the outcome may be?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that fear can be like, it varies. Like for me, like I said, it was like the fear of ruining a relationship, or that, my mom might be mad or whatever. But it can vary depending on the child, what what part of that is affecting them.
Yeah, you're right. And actually, just recently, well, not recently, but a few months ago, there was a young lady on Twitter that went viral. She worked for a Chick-fil-A. I can't remember which Chick-fil-A it was or where it was, but she worked for a Chick-fil-A, and she had been vocal about being touched inappropriately by a colleague of hers. And she went to the store operator, I believe, or the manager. I believe the operator and manager are one and the same, but she went to the store operator and she vocalized that, and they didn't take her seriously, and they threatened to fire her. And I felt her. I believed her. She went on Twitter and she cried and poured her heart out. And she is a black lady. She's a young black woman, and I think that's a major factor as well, because the hashtag protect black women, because too often black women aren't being protected. And so she vocalized how she felt, and that she was touched inappropriately, and they threatened to fire her. But for her, she quit. She didn't deal with it, which is, I'm proud of her. I'm glad that she didn't put up with it and she left. But yeah, like, definitely being vocal about something like that doesn't have the positive response like it should. And that's something that society needs to do better at, especially for black women. Protect black women. Like, the black women are the least protected women in the world. It's unfortunate. And I found a quote, if you don't mind me reading it, about protecting black women. It's the struggle to protect black girls and women remains. Unfortunately, black women remain vulnerable to sexual violence due to what we call intersectionality, the systemic oppression black women experience based upon their race and gender. These institutionalized practices and policies prevent their equitable enforcement. Because of what is known as the strong black woman archetype, the dangerous single story told about black women that uplifts their strengths, perseverance, and survival, and minimizes their emotional well-being, tenderness, and humanity. Black women are rarely protected. And that's so true. The strong black women complex that so many people think that we have, like, black women aren't allowed to be vulnerable. Black women just need to be strong. And I hate that. Like, and if we're vocal, we got an attitude. It's the angry black woman. It's that tired narrative that will never die. Why can't black women be vulnerable?
Right. And if you're too passionate, then you're that you have an attitude or whatever, and it's like, I don't have an attitude. I'm just speaking my mind, and I should be allowed to do that. But you have to speak to what you were just talking about. It's been going on for years. Like, even if you go back to like days in slavery, like, they used to just come and take us and do what they wanted to do with us, get us pregnant, sell our kids, or whatever. Like, and then our black men couldn't protect us at that time, because if they tried to, they would get whipped or beaten or killed or whatever. So it's never been like that. Stigma has been ingrained to not protect. And then the value of the black woman was never set in precedent back even in those days. And if you fast forward to like when slavery was abolished, and you still had situations where black women were raped. There was a documentary I was watching at one time where they were talking about it was a white man's rite of passage when they turned of age to lose their virginity. They would go out and find the nearest black woman, whether she be walking home by herself or wherever the case may be, wherever they found her, and they would rape her and sometimes group rape her to lose their virginity. And that was like high fives all around because I got my first black woman or whatever. And so like even if you look at the serial killer rates or serial rapists and stuff like that in the now, like a lot of women that are in those situations are minorities because they are less likely to be looked for by the police. Like it's never been a big deal for black women to have value, or brown women too. Like it's just like it's not something that people want to take the time to recognize or put any kind of energy into because they don't really care, you know? And
Yes,
that sucks.
absolutely. It does suck. And I just I want to drop some stats really quickly before we go, just so everyone out there can really truly understand what's going on in the world, specifically America. These stats are from the RAIN organization. It's every 68 seconds, an American is sexually assaulted. Every 9 minutes, that victim is a child. And only 25 out of 1,000 of the perpetrators will end up in prison.
Mm-hmm.
That's very low and unfortunate. Another one, 81% of women and 43% of men experience some form of sexual harassment or assault in their lifetime. So like you were saying earlier, men fall victim of it just as well. 1 in 3 women become victims between the ages of 11 and 17. 51.1% of female victims are assaulted by an intimate partner, and 40.8% by an acquaintance. So that's typically how it goes. Like you were mentioning earlier, like you were a victim of assault by someone you knew, like a family member. So it typically it typically is someone in the family. And do you think that's another reason people don't come forward is because it's a family member that does it? Like, do you think it'll be easier for them to speak up if it was someone they never knew compared to being a family member?
I think that the family member dynamic is difficult because you don't want to mess up whatever, like there's the fear of messing up whatever could go wrong in the family, and then you don't want to be blamed for that because there's a lot of consequences that can come with that. You know, like you might tell on your uncle, and then you might have your uncle and your aunt mad at you, or the kids might treat you different because they think you're a liar or whatever the case may be. Like, so it can kind of fall in different things. But I think that it would definitely be harder to tell if a family member did something to you versus a stranger. Most the times when you are a victim of being molested, you grow up to be a victim of other sexual assaults, and because you have that mentality of that it's okay to hurt me, or you have that, like it's a lot of healing you have to do when stuff like that happens to you. And so like predators they know who they can do stuff to because it's a certain kind of child or a certain kind of like they're not going to mess with a kid that's really confident and outgoing and sure of themselves as a kid versus somebody that's shy and quiet and reserved. They're more likely to go after somebody that they feel like that they can get away with it with. And most predators, when they're predators, they know what they're looking for, you know? Even people who rape people as adults, they know what they're looking for. You know, like Atlanta's one of the biggest sex trade hubs in the United States. And so you look at like there's constant trade-off like with from kids all the way up to adults and both sexes, men and women, and they just like selling so many people into the sex trade, and the sex trade is a multi-million-dollar business. And so I often think about how or why it's not as talked about as it should be, but it's like if you look at, there's politicians involved, there's famous people involved, there's all kinds of people involved. What is that guy's name that had the island?
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein. And so you look at how many people he, you know, how many girls he took advantage of. And that's just one square. You know, there's so many things all over the world. And Mexico is really big, in Russia. And they just trade all these women, men, boys, girls, babies, whatever, and whatever you want. And so like I don't know if the sex trade will ever stop because there's so many people in power positions that's involved with it. You know what I mean? Like that's a whole different level of trauma because some of them women never get out of it, you know? Or some of the men never get out of it. And it's like even when they do get out of it, how fucked up are you then?
Absolutely. And you were saying you're 40 now.
Yes.
And you're saying, you said earlier that you just recently told your mom about what happened to you.
Yeah.
How did you handle it? First of all, how old were you when it happened? Do you recall how many times it happened? And how did you handle it when you, because you didn't tell anybody or because you didn't tell your mother, how did you handle it when you were growing up?
It started happening when I was about 6 or 7. It stopped happening when I was about 10, when I was like in my own home with my mom. Maybe like 9 or 10, like maybe even 8. So a couple of years. I can't remember exactly because a lot of it I tried to block out. But it happened a lot. Like whenever whenever they wanted to, I guess. At the time, like when it first started happening, it was like I knew it was wrong and I didn't know what to do, but I knew it was wrong. I was like, this is not right. Like I had a feeling of it being wrong. After a while, I just kind of went into my own space in my own head, and it's like, you do what you want to do, whatever, until you get done, and then I'll deal with it after that. And then, you know, I never really said anything because, you know, my reasons for not saying anything. But now that I'm older, like, and my mom used to like always wonder why I didn't want to like deal with her side of the family. And she would, and I never, like, even then I never told her. But for some reason I told my guy, and I was like, I feel like I need to tell her. And so it just kind of brought about all the, you know, it recently brought up all those insecurities and stuff like that I had carried with me throughout most of my life. And I'm currently seeking therapy to kind of work through some of that stuff because I didn't realize how much it affected my relationship that I'm currently in, and how it affects my view of things and how I trust people and whether or not to let somebody in or not. It just kind of, like, I've always had trouble trusting people, and I've always been on guard with letting people in and being vulnerable and all the things. But I didn't realize how much it affected my relationship. Like, I always have felt like men only want me for sex. Like, they don't want to get to know me. Or I would compartmentalize the fact that, and this is something I recently learned, that I compartmentalize sex. Like, I say that, like, this is the sex part of me, and you like me in this area, but all of the rest of me is different, and you don't love me for all the rest of me, but you just like this area of me. And so part of me being celibate is like, okay, I want you to know this part of me and not this part of me. So I'm gonna take you out of the sex part out of the equation completely. But when I met my guy, and it was like one time we got into an argument because he said that he was fantasizing about me, and I was like, well, I hope that I mean more to you than just the fantasy. Like, I hope it's not just sex or whatever. And so after talking to my therapist, she was like, he's not meaning it in a sex way. Like, obviously he likes you in all these other ways, but the fantasy is like, he wants you in this way too. Like, he wants all of you. And it never dawned on me that a person could really actually want all of me, and that would be okay. Because like I said, I had been separating the two for so long. And so the idea of somebody loving me for me and wanting me for the intimacy was foreign. And so that's something I have to learn to deal with, to say it's okay for somebody to love me completely, you know?
Absolutely. And I'm happy that you were able to get the help that you need, and you're still getting the help, because I mean, assault definitely has lifelong mental effects on everybody that it happens to. And before we go, I just want to shout out the National Helpline for Sexual Assault. You know, if you've been a victim of it, or if you know anybody that needs somebody to talk to, it's the RAIN organization. They have a 24/7 help hotline. It's 1-800-656-4673. 1-800-656-4673. Like I said, they're 24/7. If you need somebody to talk to, they got you. And I mean, honestly, I just can't stress to you all enough. Just, you know, speak up, because you're too many women and men who are victims of sexual assault, you know, inflict harm on themselves, or even resort to killing themselves before seeking help. And before it gets to that, you know, I really want you all to feel safe enough and to get the help that you need. But that's really all I have to say on the matter. Tony, thank you so much for sharing your story. I know it was hard for you, like so many other women, but it's important, and I'm glad I was able to have this conversation with you.
Oh, you're welcome. I appreciate you listening. I also want to say to all the women who have experienced and are survivors of sexual assault that you are worthy, you are enough, you are everything that you want to be, and get help to kind of work through the stuff, because I know it's hard. And I just want to stress to you, like, you are enough, regardless. Like, who you are is enough, and don't let that person that hurt you take charge of your life any longer. So be blessed, be healed, and all of the things. And thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks, guys. If you enjoyed today's topic, let's keep the conversation going. Make sure you like us on Facebook at Similar Thoughts Podcast, and follow us on Instagram and Twitter at _Similar Thoughts.
And also follow me at A1 the Artist. That's AONE_the_artist. And I am the Black Sheep. And that's IM_THA Black Sheep. Thanks again for listening. And you guys have a wonderful week.